Hello, everyone. My name is David Reed, and welcome back to Dial the Gate, episode 151. Hope you enjoyed our GateCon content this past September. I had some family things that happened. We were supposed to start back a couple of weeks ago, but we're getting into this now. I appreciate you joining. Alexis Cruz is joining us this hour, and I'm thrilled to have him back. Stay tuned after the show. I have a message from Paul McGillian's family I'd like to share. Before we get started, if you like Stargate and you want to see more content like this on YouTube, it would mean a great deal if you click the like button. It makes a difference with YouTube's algorithm and will help the show grow its audience. And please also consider sharing this video with a Stargate friend. And if you want to get notified about future episodes, click the subscribe icon. Giving the bell icon a click will notify you the moment a new video drops, and you'll get my notifications of any last-minute guest changes. And clips from this live stream will be released over the course of the next few weeks on the gateworld.net YouTube channels. As this is a live stream, Alexis is here to answer fan questions. I'll be starting off with him first. We have moderators in the live chat who will be taking your questions as well. So we will be sure to turn those around to Alexis. Alexis Cruz, if I can get my button here working right. And of course, hello.
Hey,
How are you?
I'm great. How you doing?
I am well. I did not format this properly, so give me just a minute here. I'm getting you taken care of in real time here. So, and okay. So there we go. Okay. The settings, I've been gone for a little while, Alexis, and things have changed. Let's just put it this way. It's great to have you back. How is life? How are things going?
Pretty good. They're safe and quiet, and it's how I'm liking it these days, peaceful. And staying busy. I've been pretty busy this year and working quite a few different things and going in a few new directions, and it's been great. It's been great. But settling into family life it's been quiet but not sedentary. So it's been an interesting sort of mix that I wasn't quite expecting, but it's been better than I expected. I thought I sort of had to do one or the other, and it's turned out I can do both.
Give me an example of finding your way to strike a balance with
Well,
with both.
well, it used to be, I think, and it's part of the sort of the whole paradigm mindset that you get in um, when you're just sort of hustling for work or hustling for your career and your ambitions and all these other things, and you don't have anything else going on. There's a different energy that you
Mm-hmm.
have, and there's a different carelessness that you'll have when you take risks, right? And so I found I planned a little bit less in that regard because I was free to be more careless, uh, and now I have to be more careful, which has allowed me to actually like take a breath and think about things more than I did before. And I guess I was always a thinker, but really calculating on what is worth my time, what is worth the value of my interest and my energy, because now I only have so much, and not just because of my own reserves, but because some of those are reserved for other specific
Exactly.
people.
Exactly.
you
So
know
you're finding yourself being more selective.
right.
Okay.
And that just changes all of the happy things that are in my life, and the quality of the happiness, the quantity of that happiness, and how I'm able to appreciate it more in ways that I never could before.
Are you more selective of the content that you want to take part in, considering the possibility that your child is going to view it in the future? Or have
Uh,
you always chosen
yes.
family-friendly stuff anyway?
Uh, no, yes, but not because of that.
Okay. Okay.
so it wasn't about that. I was about family friendly stuff to begin with. In fact, my own tastes are way edgier.
Okay.
Always have been. They always have been. But early on, I I sort of fell into this family-friendly track in terms of the career work,
Hmm.
and that's what was popping, and I was good at that, and I was with that thing, um, but my own taste was edgier. So it's not so much about that, and it's not so much about what my kid will see when I'm older. Uh, because he's going to be a lot like me in
You're already seeing that, huh?
yeah,
Okay.
he's gonna take in everything. He's gonna, we can't hide things from him. And second, and I think related to that, it's a little different. In general, I don't know, it's sort of cultural patriarchy, I guess. As a guy, I can get away with a lot more in my work, I think. Um, that I don't have to answer for eventually, by anybody's judgments. We just have a little bit more wiggle room with that kind of thing. If that's something that you care about, you know. So that's not really so much. It's more about just for my own sake, the value of like, am I having fun? Am I
Mm,
am I telling a good story? Um, is my participation being valued? Like what I'm bringing to it, like are people digging it? Do you want more of that, right? The good time that you're having um, is where I'm more selective about things, and I don't bother with like I'll do small roles and I'll do little cameos and I'll do little guest spots. I'll walk on things here and there, um, because they're all just sort of cogs in my bigger wheel.
hmm.
But I don't want to do the same cogs or a cog that you've seen before. You know,
So would Skara be off the table in a
irrelevant,
reboot?
irrelevant cogs.
Oh, okay. So Skara would not necessarily be off the table in a reboot.
Oh God, no, that's a whole
Okay.
different. That's like a real thing.
That's one of the important
That
cogs.
would be like a real legit thing.
Absolutely. Well, he would
Absolutely.
be a dad now. Well, I mean, an ascended dad, I guess. Well, it depends on what they all want to do with the. Who knows what's going to be happening right now? Amazon purchased
Well, if
MGM, and
depends if they did a
yeah,
reboot, if they did a reboot, my Scara isn't coming back for a reboot. I can guarantee you that. Not my Scara. They could recast it. I'm not sure. Like they'd have to come up with something really spectacular to want to use the character in
mm,
order to recast it. And okay, great if you do, but I think that there's so many other characters to put that much effort into,
that's true.
you know, because you'd have to reboot it and start the story all over again. So here you're introducing a character, in which case it could be any character. It doesn't even have to be Scar. It's you want um, insert sidekick. And not to belittle it, just in terms of the archetype, right?
Hmm.
Insert sidekick, and then fill it out, and make it like we made Skara into
Hmm.
something, because that's essentially how it started. Here's the show, pop in, boom, and then turned into something. So they'd have to do that all over again. And they could absolutely do that. Or if it's like a sequel to, then they could bring back Skara. Again, it's all speculative. I'm neither writer nor producer, right? But then they could bring it back as a now older, mature, whatever, and they'll figure out what that story is. Um, Again, assuming that's the story they want to tell, because there's so many different stories, and everybody within
Hmm.
1,000 light years proximity to the project
It's
has
true.
an opinion on what the story is going to be, and for Scar to be in it is going to be like 0.011
Oh, I don't know. We'll have
those
to.
ideas. Um, I wish it would be more. I love the character, so does a lot of other people. I agree, but just thinking realistically.
Right.
And then, of course, the third option is, and I think probably my preferred, maybe most people's preferred after it's all said and done, is this idea of bringing back the people that you've connected with and that you love in new ways, in a new role. Because ultimately, our franchise and our fandom is very meta blurred, right? It's not just that you love the characters, you love the actors. And it's not just that you love the actors, you love the characters. And so there's an interesting combination there that can be used and exploited, right? By everybody. So like, and that's what they did with Richard Hatch on Battlestar Galactica. Like that's the move, right? That's the
Yeah,
move
that agreed.
for everybody. That's
Yeah.
the in any context, whether that's the move,
You got the best of both
bring him
worlds with
back,
that.
give him something phenomenal and juicy that he can sink his teeth into, and you got lightning in a bottle all over again from a completely different angle.
What I've seen you did Law and Order SVU, TV series called Blue Bloods. What have been number one dad? All right, there we go. What have been any particular highlights in your work from since we saw you last about a year and a half ago?
Yeah, I did a play
Okay.
up in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, the Barrington Stage Company, very prestigious theater company out there. And it was Anna in the Tropics by Nilo Cruz. And Anna in the Tropics is a very famous play, also the Pulitzer Prize winning play. And I've been wanting to do it for a long, long, long time. Several of my friends have done the play, and several of the people who originated the play are friends of mine or associates. So it's sort of a thing that's been peripherally around.
Circling.
Man, if I got a chance to do that play, that'd be really.
Okay.
So the opportunity came up to do this up in the Berkshires, and not just any opportunity, but with this phenomenal theater company and these great people attached. So it was not just the opportunity, but a golden opportunity, as it were. So I went in, nailed it, and got in there, and we did the play this summer, and we opened to standing ovations, and it was just wow, like what a phenomenal experience. Certainly for the audience, because it's a wild, wild piece about this family in 1929 in Florida who owns a cigar factory. And they're sort of struggling with the times as they're changing and trying to figure out how to move into the future or stay connected to the legacies of their past. And my character is very much the modernist, and traditionally played as the foil, the antagonist. But I found a lot of nuances in the piece that I was able to sort of switch it up a little bit. He's still very much the foil, but there is another foil who is this lector who comes in the old days in these factories. They would hire lectors to read novels, famous works of literature, Tolstoy and Dickens, and and they would read out to the world
Like while they worked.
while they work. Yeah, and it would
Wow.
help
Okay.
ease the monotony of things. This is how a lot of
Okay.
the educated labor force was educated as well, that they would read out newspapers, things of the day, all these things. And they were these, masterful orators of their time, paid really well, what have you. So there's this sort of adversarial relationship between that guy who comes into the factory and my character who is running the factory but doesn't own it, and had a bad experience with a former lector who ran off with his wife.
Jeez.
But in the end, like he ends up being absolutely right about this guy because he's totally exploiting everybody. But everybody thinks because I'm the modernist that I'm the bad guy, stripping away our traditions. So it becomes
Wow.
really this conflict between the old and the new. What is a part of our cultural history, and our emotional legacies, and what isn't? What is just baggage, right? And what can we afford to cut and what not cut? And what do we cut for survival? And what do we keep for survival? And in there, it's mixed within this backdrop of what you would expect of 1929 Cuba. So, lots of vibrant colors and sweat and sensuality, and, all these things were a part of it. And so it was a remarkable experience as a spectator, and then for us as actors as well. And for me, it was not one of my first. I've done bad guys before, but he was supposed to be a bad guy.
Mm.
He wasn't actually a bad guy. He was really just caught between a lot of different circumstances. And so I went into it, there's this idea of when actors play bad guys that they're the character you love to hate. And so I wanted to do something reminiscent of that, but upside down. And I wanted to be the character you hate to love.
Man, there's something about him that just makes me want to root for him, but I don't like it.
Right,
Yeah.
right, right. But think about that. That's hard. What do you do with that? How do you create that? So that was the challenge that I set out for myself and for the production. And thankfully, the director and everybody else was down with it because it was really interesting. And it turned out to be, this really sympathetic, angry, ferocious, um, legit, fair point monster of a guy
Mm-hmm.
that was fascinating. Uh, and really cathartic too, because I was able to really just get into all these different pieces and boxes that I put away and just like, oh, let's see what that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
Put that out there. And so much of it came from a different place too, because I would have put it all together, crafted it very differently before I was a dad and a husband,
Mm-hmm.
and my ideas about the world and myself and all of these things. And so, and prior to all this, I was really struggling, to be honest, with uh, coming to my age. Uh, like most people, I guess nobody wants to get old, kind of thing, right? But I was sort of, I couldn't get in my skin suit properly. It was almost there and something was not quite. And so this whole experience with this play, there's something about live theater and the working through it that's different.
Mm.
Day to day, you're rehearsing, you try this line this way, and you have feedback that comes back from your other actors and your director. You're talking philosophy while you're doing the lines, and would people behave this way and why, of the history of, and then all of us were Latin of some kind, and most of us were Puerto Rican. So it was that. So there was a lot of familial banter and sharing of that work from a perspective that only we know
Mm-hmm.
how amongst each other. When we speak our own language.
Mm-hmm.
So it became really cathartic to exercise a lot of these ideas that we all had about our families and our culture, and what's the prettiness and what is the ugliness and what is the and that sort of became a thing too, because oftentimes we want to um as ethnic actors, when we're putting on an ethnic show as a biographical, cultural production, we often try to sanitize it and put our best foot forward, right, for all the obvious reasons we've talked about forever. But
Mm.
there's also the truth that needs to be told too. Um, and when the sanitizing something uh, weigh down the effectiveness of those ideas, right? So there was a lot of that, a lot of confronting our own generational patterns and our own, because we're looking at it through the eyes of these characters and what they're going through. So it makes you really look at your own life.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, you have to. It's inevitable. It's sort of the work hazard. So it was fascinating to come at it now, like it. It's cemented by the end of it, having done this play. Uh, this new turn the corner Alexis, and this groundedness that a lot of people will say I always had, but I didn't really. It was, I was sort of treading gravel.
But you yourself personally have found more certainty in that place.
I absolutely, yeah, a
And as a
thousand.
voice as well, not just physicality or looking in the mirror.
As a voice, what do you mean?
In terms of finding who you are as a performer when you speak,
Yes,
when you
yes.
approach a part verbally.
1,000%. And I was able to exercise that. And then, we had challenges too, and different points of view at different times. That happens in the process. Um, and I was really proud of how we all handled it, and how I stuck to my ideas and the other cast members stuck to theirs, and we, negotiated things through. Um, and yes, I very much feel, maybe for the first time, my own artist in a real way. The irony is that I'm not running around like fireworks now trying to
Mm-hmm.
prove it to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And that was an interesting corner to turn too. This sort of not having to prove
Right.
it, having to win and fight all the time. Just
And I hear people talk about like when they go into interviews and things like that. You know, they a lot of people turn a corner when they go, you know what, screw this. I'm just gonna go in and be me,
Mhm.
and not like be off the wall, but not
No,
try to prove yourself to everybody all the time.
right.
And how often people are like, well, apparently that worked. And also, I think it's something interesting that you're touching on as well, because we often I certainly ask myself, who am I? And it's not just who am I, but who am I at right now? Who am I in this period of my life? Who am I going to allow myself to be based on the things that are happening to me, based on the circumstances that befall us? You know, what sort of breathing room am I going to allow myself to be? Set challenges for myself, but
Right.
also set reasonable expectations as well. I'm not the same person. We're not the same person we were yesterday or 10 years ago.
Right. And some of that, that recalibration has to do also with I say sort of balancing the books. There's things you might examine about yourself that you didn't know you had to examine
Mm,
about yourself, or you didn't actually have to examine yourself before because you hadn't been living in these circumstances,
hmm.
right? And now you are. So that's sort of where issues and things that I thought I had settled, that were very settled as far as I
Right.
knew, suddenly came back up in full force. But what I noticed, it didn't come back up in a sense that it was triggered by or for that younger person that had issues with it. I was right. It was settled.
Hmm.
It's that this whole new daddy Alex has a whole list of new issues about that thing because I have stronger opinions about things
Right.
than I did before. And now I look at it and go, the hell did I ever tolerate that at all for?
Right.
Like now, wait a minute. Time to bury this one.
Do you look at, in terms of their triumphs and their failures, do you relate to your parents more and more?
Well, as they say, the older I get, the smarter my parents get.
uh, that's true. That's true. Um, I had I keep on forgetting to ask this on camera. And I think that it's an interesting perspective, because when we went to the series, we learned that Daniel had taught Skaara English. And I asked you after an interview once, and I never got it on camera, where your inspiration was for his particular accent. And you told me this story, and I wondered if you would tell it again.
I'm not sure if it was the same story if I remember it correctly now. But so the it was piecemeal. Basically, it came together very piecemeal at the time. I have a very good ear for languages and for sounds, but that's not necessarily always technically correct.
Mm.
Um, I'm sort of a mimic that way. So I had known back in the day, I had known a man who was Egyptian, and he had a particular accent. Um, and to me, it sounded very lilty, right, with a lot of little rolling syllables in it. And there was something that that sort of elements of what I take as elements of French Franco influenced in terms of the sounds and the clicks and things, with a more organic in the mouth, like Spanish is, or some Hebrew, or right. So again, to my ear. So listeners,
Mm.
don't cringe too much. As my 19-year-old self was taking it, so I wanted to get this sound that was somewhere in between, like him, this man that I knew. And that's how I approached it. But knowing that this was an ancient civilization, I knew it would be different. So I also knew that I had a little bit of wiggle room because nobody had ever heard it before. And
Mm-hmm.
um, context is everything. I
Mm.
think today there's much more attention to specificity, and we have a much more sophisticated audience today.
With more sophisticated tools
Right, right,
right in their hand while they're watching.
right. I remember as a kid that it was a lot easier to get away with accents, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
to sort of, you know, it's sort of like adjacent to, and then it's good enough. For better or for worse, like it was a benefit for me in terms of I could focus on other things, but in a larger, deeper way, it was kind of sucked in that, when it came to brown people languages, to most people, it all sounded the same, you know, and that's kind of a cold reality. So we could exploit that on the other side of it, um, to create sounds and contexts that would be familiar for the audience, which ultimately, whatever the sociology is, ultimately I understand my job is to make the transmission of this story relatable and easier for you to grasp and step into. And whatever trick I got to use to make that happen is I'm going to use it, whether it's authenticity, whether it's reverse psychology,
Mm.
own projections, right? Smoke and mirrors, whatever it's got to be, there's the story get told. You get the point that I'm giving to you, right?
Right.
Creating for you. So as long as that all happens, and then luckily, I think instinctively I was more on the right track than not. And then by the time we got into it, um, we started learning the actual language from the anthropologist on set. And once that started happening, then things started getting a lot more serious. Where because of what we all did actually know about language in our own actors training, we were able to recreate this language technically and organically and find what the actual right sounds are.
Mm. Are you talking about working with Dr. Smith on
Yes,
the film?
right,
What a
right.
brilliant man!
Absolutely,
Holy
it's
cow!
just an incredible experience doing that. But we were able to, in real time, discover how people spoke. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't give a whole lot of, like there's always nuance for the moment of their day, right?
Yeah.
There's slang you and I have today. There's just a hey, 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 whatever it
Right. It's
is,
not always
all about
exact.
today that
Yeah.
nobody, historian, will ever figure out. So, sans all of that. But again, part of the relativity, and I think we captured that, is all the lines in between, not just the sound. So it's in your body movements. And like I don't think anybody uh, doubted that when you heard the Aberdonian people talking to each other and partying together, that they were really saying stuff and they were relating to people. It's that you weren't just seeing like actors translating lines and this very stiff way, right? You felt like there were things unsaid between these
Yeah.
characters that you're not quite picking up as you're eavesdropping, right? That life was there. So, because we made that relatable to you, whether you understood the language or not.
There was a context going on there, especially in that first dinner scene in the movie.
Right.
There's layers because as we come to find out in the film, Kosuf has been teaching his children actually reading and writing, but can't let the visitors know that because they're wearing the symbol of their
Right.
their evil god, and it's that we recently on Wormhole Extremist we went back and replayed the film, and that it all that there's 10 levels happening there. They're all trying to figure out who we are, the the Air Force is trying to figure out what these people are doing and what their relationship is to this thing that comes and lands. And it for a mid 90s, action movie, a lot was put into it that
Yeah.
didn't have to be. I mean, when you think about it,
Yeah.
that's pretty legit.
And that's what happens when when you get great people, great professionals having fun,
Hmm.
doing what they know they're great at, and you bring them all together. That's what happens. And it's not, every piece of it, every person wants to go the extra mile. They see their part of the whole shining through, and you want to show up for it.
Hmm. Absolutely. Um, Lockwatcher wanted to know, and I think you've mentioned this before. Alexis, did you keep the Zippo?
I did keep the Zippo.
Okay.
I don't remember. I don't have it now. Maybe it's in storage
Oh,
somewhere.
I would hope so. That would be worth some cash in an auction.
Probably. Who knows? Who knows where that is? I did keep I kept some of the mining tools
Ah.
that I have. Probably I have a big not going to pickaxe in it too.
Oh, that's legit. Um, Tom CZ11. What was a big change from going to the film to the series? You're an ambassador from one to the other now at this point. Eric Avari would come later, but you were, proof that the DNA from one was existing in the new thing. What was? I mean, you're going from Dean Devlin to and Roland Emmerich to Mario as a party. That's quite the leap.
Uh, Not in that regard, it wasn't so
Oh,
much.
okay.
Um, I'd been I'm used to different directors and their different visions and takes on things already. That part hardly registered, to be honest. Aside from by that point, I had a 3 4 month relationship with Dean and Roland, so I
Mm-hmm.
knew that, and I was never able to get to know
Mm.
just about anybody on SG-1 that well, right? For that long time to bond with them, aside from the cast
Mm-hmm.
themselves. Uh, so in that regard, it's a much different experience. But then that was sort of buoyed by, yeah, I was the ambassador from the other thing, so I didn't have as much anxiety as I normally would have in that kind of a case, because I was like, all right, I already did this. Cool.
I know this guy.
Yeah, yeah. I can't really do it wrong. So
That's a good point.
yeah.
They
Uh,
had to have liked what we did before.
right, right. So what was different was more about the unknowing of
Mm-hmm.
what else would be different. Where do we go from here? Right. That's something I didn't know. And I wasn't privy to any of those conversations like I used to be on the film. And the film itself is a finite thing. There's a story arc, beginning, middle, end. We're done in 4 months. Boop, boop, wrap it up. Uh, Completely different on the
Mm-hmm.
TV series. So that was a little weird. And I was always an awkward kid too. Like I might have been like cool and collected, maybe. I mean, everybody sees a different part of you, and I've been all over
That's
the
true.
spectrum for my years. But I was always kind of awkward and shy. Didn't speak to people unless it was through the work because that was my work ethic. Like my work ethic was stronger than my social skills, right? Um, and I get very nervous about otherwise. So I fall back on the chain of command and doing the work. And it was and if you like that and you want to be my friend because of it, then cool, come be my friend, but I wouldn't dare step out to try and be your friend. Not that I didn't want, I wanted to desperately.
Yeah.
I wouldn't dare do it, so So you lose a lot of opportunities to get to know people. On the other hand, it balanced itself out too, because when you don't know somebody and you don't know how to get to know somebody, and you are awkward, you end up putting your foot in your mouth half the time. So I saved myself half of those.
That's true. Yeah, if you're not overextending yourself, you're not going to,
Yeah, yeah.
put yourself in those situations. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting you say that because you think about, well, what if I had just asked the girl out?
Right, right, right.
Where could I be?
Right, right. Well, and then and then it turns like, and then the girl turns around and goes, "He's so stuck up because you never asked her out." Like, well, that's the
Yeah.
completely different direction, but that's what ends up happening. And I've gotten that a lot. I've gotten that quite a lot. People have said that I'm unapproachable and stuck up, all this other stuff, and I'm just,
No.
I'm
I mean,
sitting
I
in a
believe you, but
thinking about
no.
Dungeons and Dragons, bro.
Yeah.
It's like,
This is I get it. Can one of my favorite scenes, Vimy Scout wanted to bring this up as well. The scene in the film when Daniel is sneezing into the handkerchief and Nabe takes the handkerchief from Daniel, and Skaara gives it back to him like, "Hey, I found this for you." Do you remember this scene
yeah,
walking on the dunes?
yeah, 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 yeah.
And then later on, using this to connect to who Kurt Russell's character is looking for. With, remember the guy who sneezes and he's got the, was that, how much of that was in the script and how much of that was just on the fly? Like, let's try this. Let's see if this works. This will be a funny scene between O'Neill and the kids as they're trying to find Daniel, who's currently with Shari.
I'm not quite sure that I remember. I want to
Okay.
say that part of it was plotted.
Okay.
Um, and in hindsight, it makes sense that it was plotted because it was a plot point.
Okay.
It led one scene into the next. Whereas, like, we had a lot of improv, but we
Mm,
didn't improvise the structure of the piece, and we didn't improvise the plot points. Right? We
okay.
knew there were plot points, like that we had a script, it might have been bare bones in terms of the dialogue and these sorts of things, but there was enough in it to give everybody a sense of place and time and all these things, and the events were still immutable throughout so
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And again, I can't remember specifically, but I want to say that was plotted and not improvised. um, that said, the nuances of how it came around, and there was a lot of improvisation in terms of that kind of stuff. um, not just the delivery, but like what we would load into a moment.
Mm-hmm.
We load this idea and this idea and this idea and this idea, and then whatever the makeup of the scene would then start being choreographed accordingly with that.
To fit that.
But we knew that this scene was going to happen, even if we didn't know how it was going to happen within it.
That a lot of that, I think that a lot of that would apply in pretty much most work. I would surmise.
Not necessarily.
No.
It depends on, there's different sort of cinematic movements, and director style, and you saw a lot more of this kind of stuff with cinema verite, and some of the older directing now from the 70s through the 80s, who would just run out and shoot stuff, and occasionally you'll hear a story about a movie being made by the seat of their pants. There was a lot more of that back then, and it was, what's the word? There was some cachet to that.
Mm.
But most films can't be done that way. There's just logistically way too much at stake, to actually get away with doing that. And on a big, huge production with a big budget, you definitely can't do any of that. And if anybody says they did, it's a myth. Make them like that's like, oh, the overnight sensation. That's you lose too much money. And these days, just and especially now, people aren't making certainly not big tent movies that way.
Mm,
There's enough ways to create content and distribute content, so people are making movies all kinds of ways. But none of those, like you don't look at those like it's this big tent movie. This is a theatrical release. It's like you don't you know the difference.
correct. Yeah, absolutely. Elizabeth Lee, how did you get into the mindset of the battle between Klorel and Skaara? Skaara was a prisoner for 3 years. Um, and I'm curious as to how you approach this because in Pretense, uh, Skaara is given an opportunity to speak for himself on the stand, and what he chooses to say is, "What I suffer each day is worse than death." And he talks about reaching out his hand to kill his brother-in-law in the end of season 1. How would you describe what it was that you interpreted Skaara as being put through by Klorel? Was it just a never-ending nightmare? And how do you resolve the PTSD coming out the other end?
All right, so the I designed Skaara to begin with along very mythic lines. So he started as an archetype and turned into this mythic figure, this ingenue type, and it was very crafted in that way. And it sort of, I was like building a little internalized Pinocchio, and I was Geppetto. And it was very intentional. Like he's gonna be like this, and then I want him to elicit these emotions, and he's gonna stand for this, and he's gonna represent that. And it was very clear and very solidified. And then I just stepped into it and gave it life. So by the time we got to and that's where the work is of turning all that mythiness into something relatable and organic. So I won't go into the details. That's all sausage making, but but that would be the effect. So by the time Klorel came around, it became really easy, and it's almost meant to be. I couldn't have planned for it, but I instinctively did plan for it. And so as Klorel came around, it was a very simple matter of taking that and creating his nemesis. So it's the anti-Skaara. And it really is that simple. It's complicated in the real time thing, but the idea of it is very simple. I just flip the coin. So every single attribute that Skaara has is just opposite. It's just bizarro opposite on the other side. And as mythic and archetypical as Skaara is, so too to became mythic and archetypical arc villain, in Klorel. And these two things internalized. Look, I'm a philosopher, and I've always been a philosopher, right? Ever since I was a kid, naturally, and then I studied it. So this just goes right back to most human beings' sort of central conflict with themselves, right? And the id and the ego and the super id and all these things. And since I was a student of that already, all I really had to do for myself was let it play out in the ring in my head, and take notes and eat the popcorn, just watch all the sort of duke it out. I mean, it's funny enough, but of course, the actual practice of it is harder. But it serves, this is the hostile part of our work, the hazardous part, because on the one hand, you're on this little hamster wheel, you're exercising all of these ghosts and all of these demons and all these things that people accumulate through life. And as actors, we are fishermen as well. We don't just get the barnacles on us. We go out and net some more. Like, let's go look for trouble. Put it in a box. Save it for later to cry over. Right? That's what we do. So so now that we have the like, who are our contestants? Oh, it's Skaara and it's Klorel. Fight.
Fights, exactly.
Man, and you just let your psychology go. Like I've got playlists, like mixtapes for both of them going on. And I'll sit, not just for them, but a lot of characters that I do. There are times I have full just sort of meditation sessions where I sit, in the dark and listen to music and
Was you're like meditating
have
on the
that
work
arrow
before a
in my head.
project?
Pardon?
Like meditating on the work before a project?
Yeah, on the character, on the
Right.
on
Okay.
the story, on how he feels it, and projecting that and empathizing.
Hmm.
The characters. That's always like sort of the greatest tool that I've developed for myself is my empathic engine to empathize with these fictional characters. Um, because I let them borrow that piece of me to get inside of it and look at the world through their eyes and let that affect me. And I understand what they're feeling because those feelings are familiar because I remember when I was betrayed.
Mm.
I remember when I was trusted. And I remember when I was right, all these things. And you let that character remember as well.
Mm.
So yeah, once you got it, it became simple in that regard. And so I think maybe what was the hard part, if there's a from the audience's point of view, it's all complicated, but from the audience's point of view, the challenge is having that fight be expressed in a way that you as the audience can see, but only in flickers. Like you're in a dark room and there's a strobe light. And so all you're seeing is just one frame
Hmm.
of a whole story that's happening in the dark. And you see one frame and then it's back to the darkness. And your mind has to wonder, like, what else is happening in that darkness in between those moments of flicker that you see. And every time you get a glimpse into something, it's hopeful and horrifying at the same time. And you don't want to know what you see in that moment of light because it's too clear. And then it goes back to black. So that's like, these are all the ideas that I was playing with the whole time, line by line, shot by shot. Which frame of the strobe light are we on at that moment?
Wow. I think that fundamentally, the character Chlorel is pretty darn. I mean, when you have to stand them side by side, I would say that Skaara is the stronger ultimately because he's able to hang on in the darkness. I would have loved to have seen just an episode focusing on you as just straight up Chlorel fighting, or the battle inside while also fighting his enemies on the outside. Skaara had to have been throwing some punches the whole time.
That would have been incredibly cool if that could be done. That'd be really fascinating. Just line up my Emmys. Hearts waiting for me.
Teresa MC, who is a dream actor that you have yet to work with?
My. This, oh, that's a good question because, like, how do you narrow it down? And I've worked with so many already. Um,
Anything that you've seen recently that you've gone, oh, I would love to work with them?
there's so many. There are great people doing some great work.
Yeah.
We like people for so many different reasons. I also don't think about it in those terms
Okay.
anymore. It's more along the line because of what we started talking about, more along the lines of what kind of a project would I like to do with this kind of a person. So I'll think like, what would I like to do with Tommy Lee Jones? What would I like to do
Mm.
with Diego Luna? What would I like to do, right, with these kinds of things. So rather than like, I want to work with that person, because context, I live in
Is
context,
relevant.
is
Yeah.
relevant. I've had my years and run of tag and, photos of people and, being on set. Like that whole, the mystique of that, the excitement, the energy, like I've had all of that. So that doesn't, that's not a thing for me anymore. It's now about like, what can I get out of the actual story from working with these people. So yeah, like I want to work with all of these masters that acknowledge are masters too. But this is what towards that,
Towards what end?
and not so much like for me and what can
Okay.
I. Not that I can't learn from you, of course, that goes without saying. And so I won't say it because it's not about that for like what I can learn. I'm confident in what I bring too. Like they don't know who I am. I'm not an A list or a B list, debate if I'm on the C list.
I
But I
disagree, but
show
okay.
up. But I show up and I know what I'm doing. Every last one of them that I have worked with acknowledges that. Like, nope. None of them, will say like, no, he doesn't know it. Like I step up. So I'm not worried about that. I'm confident in that. So what are we gonna do next? And there are a lot of people I want to do all that for all kinds of reasons, and it's okay that the shallowest of my reasons is I want to be in a Marvel movie and like do all that stuff. Like that's cool, man. That's fine.
Well, they're not going anywhere, so sooner
Like
or
I would love
later.
to work with Angela Bassett in a
Um,
Marvel movie.
yeah.
Like, I won't front.
Absolutely. Tracy wanted to know, what are you binge watching right now, if anything?
So the last thing that I got excited about, like Andor, Andor.
How is it? I'm waiting for it to finish, and then I'm going to mow it down because that's how I consume. I've
Um,
heard it's some
it's
of the greatest Star Wars since Empire.
absolutely.
Okay.
Now there's Star Wars for everybody,
Yeah,
so
that's the
always
thing.
grain of salt. But this is, I think, the definitive adult.
Hmm.
So as we were kids growing up with Star Wars as it first came out, the intensity that we approached it, the way it was so real
Yeah,
in our 7, 8-year-old
yeah,
minds,
it existed.
the reality, the stakes of that for that 7-year-old. Now we turn 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. And of course, we look back on it and we're like, it wasn't that important. But the thing to remember is that from that perspective,
Hmm.
it's super important. So I look at Andor now, and I think they made was the sequel to that experience.
Mm.
So now as an adult, we can look at Star Wars and take it seriously. This is the serious, underbelly, gritty adult. Like, how would it actually happen
Right.
if this was real? Now that we're all adults and can think about what it would be as if it was
It's Andor. That's
just like
great.
boom right there. And it's phenomenal. The cast is amazing. The writing, the dialogue, some of the speeches are just mind blowing. And it's a slow burn.
Hmm.
It is. It's a spy resistance, anti-empire movie. It's ground level, so you have to be there. You're not going to be. There's not a lot of bright colors in it,
Yeah.
so you have to be ready for it. You can be ready for that. You can go in with this Empire Strikes Back mindset, um, but like for real.
I'm thrilled that
you
Disney.
know,
I'm
it's dope. It's amazing.
yeah. It's
I get
I.
all the feels from it. It's so intense, man. And Diego Luna, God bless him, is just killing it on it. He's so easy and right and grounded in the role, even in his anxiety. It's all just a brilliant, brilliant, deep performance from him. That was very impressive. I've always been a fan, but
Great. Have you seen? Have you taken a look at Netflix's 1899?
No, I have not yet.
This is the one that I'm looking into getting hooked on next. It's the next like kind of lost, kind of mystery box kind of show from the creators of Dark, which is another great series. You should.
No, I'm a little weary of mystery box shows, though,
Okay,
in general,
I
because
I can understand.
so many of them just don't go anywhere. They get lost in loop loops,
That's true. That's true. Anything on the horizon immediately in your path that you want us to be aware of? Anything out of the ordinary, or just
Usually I'll plug these things as they come up. I'm in
okay?
between, you know, just here with family and taking care of my kid.
Yeah.
My started school this year, and um,
Ah,
pre-K, loves pre-K. But there is something that everybody should check out. So I was fortunate to be invited to be part of this called The Unauthorized Off-World Activation. This book, I wrote the foreword for this book.
can you put it a little bit closer to the camera?
Sure.
The
Uh,
put it in front of your face.
oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, sorry, hang on a second.
There it is. Perfect.
Is it reading properly on my camera? It's backwards, but can you?
Yes, forward by Alexis Cruz. Look at that.
Yeah, you can find it on Amazon, and it's an anthology of some short stories, some essays, think pieces, um, from people connected with the show, fans or pro fans, and other people, and myself. And so it's an interesting read by a lot of really talented writers, and people who've given Stargate a lot of thought. So pick that up. You can find it on Amazon.
Yes. All right.
There you are. And it was my very first forward to a book, so I was excited about it, being invited to do it, and I think it came out really nicely. So go check that out.
Keith DeCandido, Rich Handley, Joe Duffy, Brianna Elkins, Kelly Fitzpatrick, and 5 others. So yeah, Alexis Cruz. There we go. This is great. I think Gate World. I think Darren Sumner was involved as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
But this is absolutely solid. 1999 paperback edition on Amazon right now, and we'll put the link below in the episode description. So great job, man. I've always appreciated having you on in your time. Your perspective is always refreshing and thoughtful and insightful, and always excited to see what you're up to next. I really appreciate you being involved with continue to be involved with the fandom.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoy it. And you do a fantastic job, like just keeping everything alive and pushing it forward.
Got to keep the lights on, and Amazon's going to do something. Yeah. So it's just a matter of when.
Yep.
So,
yep.
All right, sir. Well, thank you so much, and we will be in touch. I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up over here.
Right on.
Thank you, Alexis.
Thank you. Thanks, Dave.
Be well, sir.
You too.
Bye-bye. Alexis Cruz, Skaara and Klorel on Stargate. Thank you so much for joining. Paul McGillian reached out to me this past week, and he asked that I share something from his family. This it was posted by Courtney McGillian, Paul's wife, and she's organizing a fundraiser on behalf of Stacy Slansey. I think this is Courtney's sister. She said, "My brother-in-law, Mike, needs our help. Just over a month ago, he suffered a massive stroke completely out of the blue and has been in critical condition ever since." So this is a GoFundMe for his medical expenses. If you have the ability, please consider donating. And please share this as well. This link is going to be already. You can find this in the description for the show below. It means Paul is a big supporter of Dial the Gate and our work, and is a huge Stargate fandom supporter. And it means the world to me that we have the opportunity to help him and his family, his extended family, in a time of need. So I want to absolutely make this aware to people, and we'll be bringing it up in the Wormhole Extremist show tomorrow as well. The link in the description is below right now, so help Chef Mike beat the odds. Thank you so much for that. I really want to send out a huge thank you to my moderating team: Tracy, Anthony, Summer, Keith, Jeremy, Reese. You guys are continuing to make the show possible on the back end while I work on the front. If you enjoy the work that we're doing and continuing to put out, I'd appreciate if you'd click that like button. It continues to help the channel grow. And if you enjoy merchandise, Stargate merchandise, we have our own little shelf over at the... Where have I put it now? I'm so out of this, trying to get back into the rhythm of the show. We're at so you can go to dialthegate.com/merch and go through one of our portals here. We've got tank tops, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and hoodies for all ages, as well as cups and accessories in a variety of sizes and colors. As we approach the holidays, this may be a perfect Stargate gift for you or a loved one. So if you want to support the show, this is a great way to do it, because you get an item and the show gets a little bit of financial support as well. My thanks to producer Linda Gategabber Fury and Frederick Marcoux at Concepts Web, our web developer on Dial the Gate, and Jeremy Heiner, our webmaster, who helps me keep the site up and going. Tomorrow, Wormhole Extremists, we will be covering... which was the episodes tomorrow? It's going to be The Enemy Within and Emancipation, starting at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we will be watching those shows live. So queue up your DVD or your streaming service or what have you and watch the shows live with us if you'd like on one device while listening on another. And that's our game plan there. So Nicole and Evie, we've been getting into the rhythm of this. We got a long way to go, but it's a good time as well. And so that's the Dial the Gate sister channel, Wormhole Extremists. That's not going to be on Dial the Gate itself, and I'll be sure to put the link in the description below for that particular episode that's coming up tomorrow. My thanks again to Alexis Cruz. What a guy. A terrific human being. I'm so thankful to have him on the show. And all of you tuning in, watching, please give the show a like. Share it with another Stargate friend. My name is David Reed for Dial the Gate, and we'll see you on the other side.